What is up, ladies and gentlemen? After an episode that had a whole lot going on, there was a lot of stuff to break down. Like, first of all, Halloween Havoc is coming back, and it is coming back October 26th. We also had ourselves a title match announced for next week, and we have ourselves a title match that happened tonight. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. I'm Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and this is your NXT recap and review. So we start off the show with our first match being Mandy Rose of Toxic Attraction versus Ember Moon in her first match in a minute. And we start this off, and this was a fun way to begin the show. We end up seeing both of these two ended up getting an offense. We saw Toxic Attraction end up interfering, but it did not play that big of a role for Ember, where she ended up being able to get momentum back in her swing. She ended up going for the Eclipse, where Mandy Rose ends up dodging it and hits a vicious running knee strike for the win. Now, one of the main storylines of this show was Toxic Attraction and Raquel Gonzalez. So later on, Raquel Gonzalez ends up responding in an interview from the vicious attack that Toxic Attraction had on her at the end of her title match last week. She ended up telling Toxic Attraction that, hey, y'all are too busy getting in my business, and sends a warning shot to them that if they get in her way again, then she's coming after them. So with that, Toxic Attraction ended up coming out, and they let her know that they're not just looking to go after her belt, they're looking to take all the female gold in NXT. So, of course, they're not looking to waste any time. They circle around the ring, and before they can do anything, we see Zoe Starks and Io Shirai come out to give some backup to Raquel Gonzalez. So this makes Toxic Attraction end up rethinking things and heading right back to the back. Now, while they're talking backstage with, of course, the champions I'm talking about, we end up seeing Indy Hartwell and Perugia end up coming. I think I said her name right. I think it's Perugia. It's one of those. She's new. I'm sorry. So we end up seeing Indy Hartwell and her best friend end up coming, and they approach the women's tag team champions, as of course Raquel realizes this isn't really her conversation to have, and Indy Hartwell and her best friend end up warning the tag team champions. But Zoe Starks reminds Indy Hartwell that we kind of beat you already for these tag belts, and Perugia ends up coming in and letting her know that that's because she didn't have me, the new blood. So with that warning shot, it looks like the NXT Female Tag Team Champions got some targets on their back. Now, with the other thing that ended up being a very big talking point for NXT, this was very small. They both had their own little video packages. But first, we're going to go to the video package of Legato del Fantasma. Now, of course, we know that Hit Row ended up getting drafted to SmackDown, and Legato believes that that's because Hit Row is running from them. And they let him know that, hey, we're not finished. And Santos Escobar challenges Mr. Isaiah Swerve Scott for the NXT North American Championship. Now, later on, we end up seeing another video package, and this one was from Hit Row. And they let Legato know, we're not running from you, we running to the money. SmackDown is looking to pay them more, so they're looking to go get that bread. But they let them know that this isn't over. So, of course, Isaiah Swerve Scott accepts the championship match, and it is official for next week that we will see Isaiah Swerve Scott versus Mr. Santos Escobar for the NXT North American Championship. Let's get back to the ring, and we see ourselves Mr. Odyssey Jones versus L.A. Knight. And Jones kind of dominates. He really does. He dominates majority of this match. Of course, L.A. Knight letting him get a little bit more in than he should have, and got some momentum going, but it was very, very small because Odyssey Jones ends up taking back over again, all up until Andre Chase comes out and runs interference for LA Knight, which leads to LA Knight hitting his finish And then while he's pinning Odyssey Jones, Odyssey looks to get his foot on the rope, but Andre Chase pushes his foot out of the way and LA Knight gets the win. We go backstage and it is our man, Cameron Grimes. And he's getting interviewed. And of course, he's talking about how there's love in the air. After seeing the wedding of Index, it makes him want a female of his own. He said he's getting back in there and getting back on the market. He's looking for himself a little lucky lady. And while he's ended up talking about getting back into the market of dating, we end up seeing Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland end up approaching him and interrupting his interview and letting him know that you shouldn't be focusing on this whole chasing love thing. Then I'm going to remind you why I am still the baddest man that is in at NXT, and challenges Cameron Grimes to a match later on. Now, Cameron Grimes nonchalantly accepts and goes and literally finds females and tries to shoot a shot. So we go back to the ring, and it is Tommaso Ciampa having himself a little promo. This is when we get the news that on October 26th, we will be seeing NXT host Halloween Havoc. And with this, Tommaso Ciampa says he needs himself an opponent for the NXT World Heavyweight Championship, and says if there's anyone with the big enough balls in the back, then come on out and accept this challenge. So we end up seeing ourselves Mr. Braun Breaker come out after a few weeks of him talking about how he wants to come after Tommaso. He lays down the challenge for Tommaso and lets him know he wants to be his opponent for Halloween Havoc. And then Tommaso lets him know, yeah, you've been here for a little while, so I have to knock you down a few levels and let you know that I'm looking to be the champ for a long time. So he accepts the challenge, and we're having ourselves an official match for Halloween Havoc, and it is Braun Breaker challenging Tommaso Ciampa for the NXT World Heavyweight Championship. Now we have ourselves another match, and it is Akin Jiro. I think I said his name right. But he ends up taking on Mr. Joe Gacy, and they have themselves a very entertaining match. I'm not going to lie. This was leading up to this point in the show. This was one of my favorite matches. It was very, very different. It was a very different match because both of these guys have very creative styles. Mr. Jiro ends up wrestling in his very nice sports jacket. And then we see Joe Gacy, who likes to fight you, but as your friend. It's different. It's different, but it was entertaining. I like Joe Gear. Mr. Giro, he stole the show for me with his athleticism. And of course, we end up seeing Gacy ends up taking control with a nice springboard bounce off the ropes clothesline. Yeah, I think I said that right. But that's what he used to win. So this was a nice, fun match. I would definitely go out of your way to watch this match. This match was very fun. And Joe Gacy ends up picking up the win. And then, very weirdly, he picks up Giro and hugs him. And then as he's leaving to the back with a smile on his face, we see this random guy in the crowd area standing up, staring down Gacy. So hopefully this leads to something, and I'm very curious what it leads to. Next up, we have Cora Jade making her NXT debut, and we end up seeing her end up looking to take on Enhancement Talent, all up until we get a surprise attack from Frankie Monet on the Enhanced Talent, and she takes out the Talent right away on the outside, and Robert Stone informs the announcer that it is now Frankie Monet versus Cora Jade, as Robert Stone made some stuff happen backstage with William Regal. So it's now official. We end up seeing Frankie Monet going right after Cora Jade and dominates the entire match. Cora Jade got next to no offense in. And then as soon as Cora Jade looked to get something going, she gets hit with a vicious spear from Frankie. And Frankie looks to set up for the Glam Slam. But shockingly, we see Cora Jade hit a roll up and gets the victory over Frankie Monet. So this match was very different. I liked how the pace went. I liked how the underdog won this time around. It's a very different formula than what we're accustomed to. Usually we see the dominant heel end up working over the very much underdog babyface, but the babyface ends up getting an offense. In this match, we saw the babyface get in next to no offense, but still pull out the win. So this is a big win for Cora Jade in her debut match on NXT. Now we go to the back, and it is MSK getting an interview. And, of course, they're getting interviewed about their big title match that's coming up in the main event, which is a fatal four-way tag match for their tag belts. And while they're getting interviewed, GYV comes up and they're letting them know, hey, of course, y'all refuse to want to wrestle us again. And now y'all have 2 other teams that y'all can pin to retain y'all's titles. So MSK is tired of the grizzled young veterans, and they flat out say, how about we do this elimination style? So, of course, these 2 teams are heated up, and we end up seeing the other 2 teams, which is Briggs and Jensen, and we see ourselves Trick and Mr. Carmelo, and they attack the other 2 teams, and we have ourselves a brawl on the backstage area. Now, while this is all going on, we see ourselves another interview, and it's Tommaso Ciampa getting interviewed about the official match that is made between him and Braun Breaker for Halloween Havoc. And of course, while this is happening, we end up seeing another person interrupt. This was kind of the theme of the night, just interruptions. But this time it's shockingly Joe Gacy. Joe Gacy says that you want someone who has the big enough balls to step up to you, and I'm letting you know that I'm interested in that NXT title. So Tommaso said, how about this? If you can beat me next week, then this match that's meant for Halloween Havoc is now going to be a triple threat match. So it's official. Next week, we have Tommaso Ciampa versus Joe Gacy. And like I said, if Joe Gacy ends up winning, he is now added to the NXT title match for Halloween Havoc in 3 weeks. Remember how it was like Joe Gacy versus Kiro was my favorite match leading up? This is my favorite match of the night. It is Pete Dunne versus Cameron Grimes. And boy, oh boy, this was fast-paced from the beginning to the end. This was amazing to see. I loved the combinations of the styles, whereas Cameron Grimes' high-flying athleticism style versus the tactician of Mr. Pete Dunne. This was amazing to see. Pete ends up working over Cameron Grimes' left arm, but Cameron Grimes was hitting high-octane offense from the start of the match. We end up seeing Ridge Holland wanting to get involved, but before he gets involved, we see Kyle O'Reilly run up out of nowhere to go after Mr. Ridge Holland, which ends up distracting Pete Dunne enough to where it looks like Cameron Grimes is looking to hit the cave in, but he misses and gets hit by the bitter end. And as right before Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland look to celebrate, we see Kyle O'Reilly run up and try to take them out at least, to where we end up seeing Ridge Holland taking out Kyle O'Reilly once again and leaving him flat on his back. Once again, I mean, is Kyle, when you gonna learn, bro? Next up, we have the debut of Tony D'Angelo. And this was different. Tony D'Angelo is over in the CWC. I'm not going to lie. And this was a different style squash match where, of course, we ended up seeing Tony own the match. But he owned it off of being one step ahead every single move of his opponent. And then, of course, when the guy wants to start to get back into the match towards the end, we see Tony D'Angelo just take him out. And he hits a nice finish, which is a Northern Light suplex that goes into a twisting suplex, which I honestly can't give it justice. It looks pretty darn good. He gets the win. Tony D'Angelo is over. I like the guy. Next match we have is Miying versus Miss Indy Hartwell. And this is when I see the best friend for the first time. When I told y'all about what happened earlier with the tag team title picture for NXT Women's Champions, that was after this. This was the match that happened before that. And Miying dominated the match. She really was giving Indy Hartwell the work. This was all up until we see Perugia end up taking a big hit into the ring post for Miss Indy Hartwell because that's her best friend. Why not take the bullet for her? You know what I'm saying? And this was enough for Indy Hartwell to shove Miss Miying right into the ring post. I make it sound like it won't that hard. She shoved the world into this woman. And she knocked her out enough to where she shoved her back in the ring, hits a springboard elbow, and ends up getting the win. This was shocking, and but after seeing what the direction is for Indy and Perugia, I'm not really surprised. And now it is time for the main event. It is the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match for the NXT Tag Titles. It is Briggs and Jensen versus Trick and Carmelo versus the Grizzled Young Veterans versus the Tag Team Champions MSK in an elimination style match. So how we start this match is very, very fast and owned by MSK from the beginning. Honestly, not gonna lie, after seeing this entire match, this was MSK's match. They end up eliminating Mello and Trick Trick by pinning Trick Trick with their tag team finish that looks very, very smooth every time they do it. Then we end up seeing MSK taking out and going crazy, taking out GYV. And then we end up seeing Josh, I think it's Josh Briggs, and I don't know Jensen's first name, not gonna lie to you. These guys are new. These cats in NXT are new, but they're packing a punch because Briggs and Jensen end up eliminating GYV from the match, and we end up getting ourselves Briggs and Jensen versus MSK. Briggs and Jensen look like they was doing all right. They look like they could have won those tag team championships. But as they were setting up for their finish once again, we end up seeing Mr. Nash Carter take out Jensen, where it leads to Wesley getting a roll up on Briggs to set up the win and the retention for MSK. So of course Briggs and Jensen are upset. They don't feel like they fully got beat, but in due to respect, they hand the tag team championships to MSK and shake their hands. And as they're leaving the ring, we see Imperium take out MSK. Yes, they left them flat on their backs again before we end up seeing Briggs and Jensen come back into the aid for MSK. But it looks like that is the next direction. So hopefully, I don't know if we're going to see this at Halloween Havoc, but we will be seeing this soon. MSK versus Imperium. Overall, if y'all couldn't tell, this is a whole lot going on this show. And I still am getting accustomed to these brand new faces in NXT. Like I said, they're new faces, but they are packing a punch. I'm really liking these people who are debuting. And it looks like that Triple H know what he's doing with NXT 2.0. But overall, I'm glad to be back. Yes, the Disciples of Wrestling are back at full force. And of course, like you've seen, Jordan's on a new night with Monday Night Raw. I'm on a new night with NXT. But of course, home sweet home. Mr. Asante is still on Friday Night SmackDown. And me and Jordan are going to be giving you guys in AEW heat later on in the week. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, like, share, subscribe, comment if you guys like what we got going on. I'm Kevin Jones of Disciples of Wrestling, and that was wrestling.